Hey, beautiful soul. Welcome to Spirit Speakeasy. I'm Giovanni, Joyful Medium. I'm a working psychic medium, energy healer, and spiritual gifts mentor. This podcast is like a seat at the table in a secret club, but with mediums, mystics, and the spiritual luminaries of our time. So come behind the velvet ropes with me and see inside my world as I chat insider style with profoundly gifted souls. We go deep, share juicy stories, laugh a lot, and it wouldn't be a speakeasy without great insider secrets and tips. You might even learn that you have some gifts of your own. So step inside the Spirit Speakeasy. Hey, beautiful souls. For those of you that are new here, I want to welcome you for the first time. If you are a returning friend, so happy to have you with me here today. We are going to talk about mediumship, but more specifically, are you a medium? What is mediumship? Can anyone be a medium? Is it about finding the right teacher? How does someone become a medium? There were so many versions of this recently when I asked you guys to submit me your questions, any questions you had about mediumship. There were several different shades, flavors, versions of this question, can I be a medium? Who can be a medium? So we're going to dive into that topic today. I want to give a little bit of a precursor just to say, I'm going to share with you what I understand right now in present time from where I stand in my experience. But it's important to note that, of course, we are always all growing and learning and understanding. And my understanding of things changes as I learn and grow, and has changed definitely over the years of my life. I'll tell you, there was a time, I've shared this before, but there was a time in my life where I didn't believe in mediumship. I thought, this is a scam and this is a way that they're convincing people of things. And a lot of that was based on maybe the way I understood it from movies or things that I had seen. And certainly there are people out there who are less than honest, who are less than expressing a gift and integrity. And unfortunately, it kind of muddies the water for everyone. Now, I did have experiences as a child mediumistically, although I didn't really understand them then, and only came into understanding these gifts as they presented themselves to me later. So we're going to talk a little bit first about what mediumship is, because that can mean a lot of different things. Some people feel like it means only communicating with those that have already crossed over to the spirit world, those that are disembodied. And let me, start there. Now, my belief system is that we are all an individual soul inhabiting these physical bodies rather than a body who has a soul or a personality. We are a soul who, for this period of our life, are in this physical body for this journey here on earth. So that being said, I also believe that when we become disembodied, when our physical body is quote unquote done for any variety of reasons, our soul continues on just in another way. We still maintain all of our memories, and we still have that spectrum of emotions to have understanding of. So that is how I understand the soul to work. And therefore, I believe that when we leave the physical body, our soul is still intelligent, is still probably more intelligent, if I'm honest, and able to communicate just in a different way. We don't communicate through physical voice anymore because we don't have the human body mechanism of physical voice box, right? So there's other ways of communicating, and the way mediumship works is a soul to soul communication rather than a verbal, mouth to ear communication. It's a soul to soul communication. We'll talk more about what that means as we go. But I want to touch into how mediumship can mean lots of different things. Now, I practice a few different types of mediumship. For me, the way I'm going to use this term is varying. So in some aspects, mediumship can mean communication with our guides, right? If you believe in spirit guides, or if you believe in, helpers that are not necessarily your loved ones or people that you knew or people that lived, they're guides, they're other types of benevolent beings, let's just say, for one way to say it. Communicating with guides is a form of mediumship. There are other forms of mediumship. You might have heard of something called channeled writing, and I'm going to complain about the languaging of this all the way through, so I apologize in advance. Channeled writing or inspired writing is another way to say it, is letting the spirit side, someone on the other side, inspire you and communicate through your physical body in the form of writing. But this can also be done with art. If you have been a listener and had your seat at the table in the Spirit Speakeasy for a long time, in one of our premiere episodes, if you go back to December, my dear friend Carolyn Wilkins does musical mediumship. She does a form of trance piano, Akashic trance piano healing. So she has spirit people, let's just say, or spirit beings communicate through her physical body through music. She's a musician and she uses her piano specifically to communicate this music for healing. There's also trance healing, which is when the medium themselves, the person who's the medium on this side, goes into a bit of a deeper trance state and allows a healer on the other side to use the physical energy of the medium to heal through them in the world. And that's just through a deeper form of meditation, but just energy healing, it can be considered a form of mediumship. There's also trance mediumship, which if you've been with me for a while, you may have heard me do on some of my talks. There are some videos up on my YouTube channel, Psychic Medium Joy Giovanni, and also on the website joyfulmedium.com in the blog section. There's some channeled videos there. But if you've ever heard of Abraham Hicks or Esther Hicks, who channels a consciousness known as Abraham, that is trance channeling. It's when the medium, the person, moves into a deep meditative state, and rather than the spirit person, being, etc., communicating healing through them, they're actually using the voice box of the medium to communicate words through the medium, but the medium is in a bit of a deeper trance state. So there's lots and lots of types of mediumship. The mediumship that I practice primarily in my work is called evidential mediumship. And what that is communicating with people in the spirit world who are usually the loved ones of my clients. It's a little different in trance work. It can be different people. But in evidential mediumship, whether it's a one-on-one session with a client or whether it's a group reading and I'm communicating with or expressing feelings, thoughts, memories of a person in the spirit world to a large group of people, it's a blending of my soul's energy with the soul's energy of the spirit person. And that in and of itself requires a degree of consent from both myself and the spirit person. And I move my awareness, my soul's energy towards them. They move their awareness towards me. We blend our energies, and then they are able to communicate with me through sensing and feeling, largely through emotions. I sometimes also receive and understand flashes of pictures. Sometimes I receive blocks of thoughts or songs or words or other bits of understanding through them. And I express it. I'm working very hard always to interpret or understand what it means, how it relates to the story they're sharing, how it relates to my recipient. And sometimes I don't always understand how it relates or where the story's going. For example, I just work bit by bit with my spirit person. And then my recipient, whether it's a one-on-one person on my Zoom screen or in my office or a group of people, the person that is understanding this spirit person, right? So if you're in my office and it's your grandma, for example, and I'm communicating details, memories from grandma or emotions or her personality, the recipient, my sitter is often what they're called, is giving me just yes, no, I don't know, saying that they understand this information as I'm stating it, or that they don't understand it, or that they don't know, they're not sure. Maybe, we can't know everything about every person. And that is essentially, in a nutshell, how evidential mediumship works. And that is mostly what we're going to talk about today. This kind of leads me into a little bit more about the spirit world and understanding the way that they communicate. But the reason I wanted to mention the other types of mediumship is because there's lots of types of mediumship. And while I can't promise everyone that they're going to be a medium where they can give evidential details from loved ones in the spirit world, certainly we all have the ability to be inspired by guides or people or angels. Certainly we all have the ability to communicate with our own loved ones in the spirit world. One of my favorite things about evidential mediumship in particular, let me get a little sip of water, is it really shows the intelligence of the spirit world. Now, the way I'm going to say this comes from a talk that my mentor, who you guys hear me mention all the time, Andy Bing, gives. The spirit person has to know who they are, first of all, because they have to know who their people are on this earth who know them, right? They have to be able to understand how to influence, suggest, nudge their person to go to a medium to get this communication. They have to present themselves to the medium who knows how to work with them. And I believe that the spirit people, your loved ones on the other side, are helping to choose the right medium for their sitter, for the person, that's in my office or another medium's office, or Zoom screen, whatever the case may be. And the truth is that there is a different medium, for everyone. The same medium. I'm not everyone's medium, right? There are people who will resonate with me, with something about my personality or something about me as a person or the way that I work. I believe certain spirit people come to work with me because they know that I will resonate with their loved one who's in my office, or that I have something in my life or someone in my life or life experiences that they can use to help communicate their story in the way that they need to. So there's all these intelligent things happening before the session even begins. A lot of mediums, we kind of joke and say especially when we're doing like a larger event called a demonstration of mediumship, that the spirit world is orchestrating that event sometimes before we even know that it's going to happen. They often are the ones, along with our guides and inspirers, inspiring us to put these events together. So certainly they are helping their loved ones to get into that audience. So they know, what's going to happen before we do. They know which spirit people are going to communicate. We as the mediums don't choose which spirit people are going to communicate or what they're going to say. Our job as mediums, my job as a medium, is to receive that information and try to be the most open and, in the simplest way of explaining it, really what I'm doing is trying to keep my mind out of it, because our human nature is to kind of fill in the blanks. We're all trained on, those puzzles when we're in school. So it's like we want to fill in the blanks. And with mediumship, sometimes the more our mind is filling in the blank, the less we are allowing that spirit person to communicate. So it's the constant work of a medium to be fully blended with that spirit person and receiving the communication and expressing it in the way they intend, and keeping the coloring of our own mind to the side. So that's the constant work, and it works on a spectrum. Some days we might feel stronger as the medium, or be our work might feel like it has more of a flow than other days. And that can vary even session to session for so many different reasons. It can be, if the medium's got something going on in their personal life and they're having a hard time separating it. It could be if the person, the sitter, the recipient comes in, and even if they say they're really open, they could be really closed emotionally. They could be only wanting to hear from one person or only wanting to hear one specific phrase. And so being closed to the rest of the communication. There's a lot of reasons that our mind can get involved more than other times. But nonetheless, that's the goal, is to keep the mind of the medium to the side as much as possible, to let the spirit person communicate in the way that they need to, the things that they need to express, and to use us as the medium, the person in the middle who's trying to help. So not only do they have to know who they are and who you are, they also it proves in a way, which is why I love it, that they do retain the memories of their life. They know what their human personality was like in every role in their life. They know who they were. In that example with grandma, they know who they were as a grandma. They know who they were as a mom. They know who they were as a neighbor or a friend or a coworker or whatever relationships they had in their own life. And they know the memories from those relationships, and they know what they want to communicate to let the person that's receiving the communication either be healed or uplifted or validated in some way, depending what the need is. For me, the way I'm trained, and most of the colleagues that I love and respect are trained, is in a way that the intention is for the highest need of the soul in that moment, the moment of the session. Now that varies day to day, and it varies person to person. And truly, we work for the spirit world. So it's also based on the need of the spirit world. Sometimes it's a healing for them. Sometimes they get to let people know that they understand something that they didn't understand when they were here, or to give the validation they didn't get to give in a way that, I don't know, just is meaningful beyond what I can anticipate. That's all the intelligence of the spirit world. They know what to say and how to say it. So it's one of the things I love about the quote unquote evidential part of it, is getting to help express the specificity of what they want in the best case scenarios. And every spirit person's different, just like every person here on earth is a little different. We have our quirks and our personalities, and we have our mannerisms, our physical mannerisms. We have things we say and the way we say it. So sometimes it's not just me giving a specific detail, such as, you've got your dad's watch and it has a gold face and it's in the second box of a jewelry drawer and it says 3:05 p.m. if you go look at it. Those details can come, but it's not based on what I want to hear or say, or even often what my recipient wants to be said or wants to hear. It's what that spirit person wants to share and why they want to share it. And sometimes it's them reminiscing, and sometimes it's them just saying, hey, I'm here and I'm okay and I love you and I know everything that's going on with you right now. It's about the love and about the relationship that they share. So the intention is always the highest and greatest good of the person in my office or on my screen and the spirit world. And truly, I work for spirit. They're my boss over there. So I want to move on to the question of, are you a medium, and can anyone be a medium? Now, here's what I understand from several mentors and amazing teachers, is that even the greatest teacher cannot make someone a medium who is not. I've heard Andy Bing say that. I have heard Mavis Patilla say that. I have heard other mediums say that as well. The way that I have heard Mavis Patilla say it in the past is that mediums are born and not made. And if you look, a lot of mediums do have some genetic lineage of mediumship. Typically, there's someone in an older generation, whether it's the direct generation above them or whether it skips a generation, that was like a sensitive or used to just know things. Lots of people have a story about a grandma or sometimes a grandpa who just knew things, or who knew who was going to call on the phone, or who just got a feeling about things, or could tell people whether they were having a boy baby or a girl baby, for example. So sometimes we see it like that, but not always. Now, the interesting twist for me in this is something I learned from Andy Bing. And this helped me understand my own mediumship in such a deep way, because I thought, when this started coming to me, I thought, certainly I can't be a medium because I would be seeing dead people, like the movie, right? I see dead people. So I would feel like I haven't experienced this always. And I didn't have, invisible dead people sitting next to me in class when I was a kid, and it didn't work this way for me. Even though I did have some experiences, they maybe weren't to the degree that I thought they had to be something, right? Something out of the ordinary, or something that proved, my gifts and abilities. But because the way I've heard, in the past, the way I had heard other people say their story, I was like, oh, well, certainly that's not me. Now, what I learned through Andy Bing is that as we grow, evolve, I don't know, move through our emotions as people, sometimes the gifts can move and rise to the surface. So while some people, have these gifts as kids and always have them and always know about them and always know how to use them, the larger percentage of people have some indication of something when they're a kid, even if it's before they can remember. But then it goes more dormant, and our human personality takes over more. We rely more on our five senses. Perhaps we're trained out of these additional sensitivities, right? Told like, oh no, that's your imagination, that's not real, etc., anything like that. And then as we go through life and grow and have experiences and heal through traumas, our energy of our soul moves, and the gifts can rise to the surface at different times in our life. So while someone might not feel like they're a medium today, in 10 years, they might, even though it's not sudden, they might feel like suddenly they're starting to experience things that they hadn't experienced before. Now, it's not actually all of the sudden, because it means that it was a quality within the ability of their soul the whole time, but maybe it hadn't risen or bubbled to the surface to be used in an active way yet. And our souls truly do know, I say this a lot, this is again a Mavis quote, the architect's plan or the maker's plan for our life. So our soul truly does know what's in our blueprint, right? What's in our plan for our life? What are our gifts? But our soul also knows that maybe it's not time for them to rise to the surface. Maybe it's not time for a certain gift to display itself. It's often why we see people change careers several times in life, or even later in life. Maybe they didn't have the permission that they felt they needed to express this side of themselves. Maybe they had to do some healing or some growth of their own to come to their emotions. There's lots of reasons and lots of things that can trigger, if you will, the gifts to start to rise to the surface. But it's often through our own growth and development, personal development, emotional processing and growth, which is why I encourage people to be on your personal development journey. You know what I mean? So I love how these two kind of, not that they're two different theories even, but the intersection of them, that while it's true that your mediumistic gifts can be available or they can be dormant, they can be in our soul's energy and we don't even know about it yet, which I feel like is what happened for me. They kind of went dormant for a long time, or just receded like the tide into the back because I had other things I was needing to do. And it can happen at busy times in our lives too. There is an ebb and flow even with mediumship, where sometimes if we're doing something else in our lives, perhaps raising kids or busy with another career, maybe it's not time for our mediumistic gifts to be at the forefront. So even though the best teacher in the world can't make you a medium if you're not, just like they can't make a pepper plant and grow tomatoes, perhaps maybe your mediumship flower hasn't bloomed yet. It could be in there. Have you ever heard or seen a plant that just for a long time doesn't flower, and maybe you thought it didn't make flowers, and then all of a sudden one day you move it near a different window and 6 months later it starts making flowers? I'm a bit of a house plant nerd, so maybe that example doesn't relate to you. But these gifts can bloom later. They can bloom at any time. So even if you're not experiencing something that you would consider mediumistic now, it doesn't mean that the gifts aren't within you somewhere. And I always encourage people to be led by what they're interested in, by what calls to them. There was a time where I wasn't interested in anything mediumistic or anything quote unquote psychic. I didn't really, I still don't really believe in fortune telling or anything like that, which is not what psychic is. We've talked about that before. So maybe you're just misunderstanding what the gifts are and what they're not, or how they present, or what they're for. Or maybe you have some gifts that are just still a little bit latent, that haven't bloomed all the way to the surface yet. So if you're interested in mediumship, I would say read books about it and continue to learn about it, and continue to enjoy other mediums. And when it's time for you, those gifts will start to rise to the surface. Meditation is a great way to start nurturing and fertilizing those gifts. I also learned that from Andy. And by the time that I sought out trainers and teachers and mentors for mediumship to understand it, it already had started happening to me. It already, I guess that's probably a bad way to say it, happening to me. I already was moving my awareness to the spirit world during healing sessions intentionally, even though I didn't realize I was doing it intentionally. At the time, I was opening my awareness for their guides or angels, or really it was guides and angels, to give me any messages or details or information that might be useful to them. And then I, from a different space in my awareness, kind of from the side, started feeling what felt like people coming and standing next to me in the room who weren't actually physically there, but it was spirit people. And then being able to, instead of get a message from their guide saying, you've been really anxious and this is what your life's been like, and this is some suggestion. I was giving details about loved ones that weren't here anymore. And if you heard the pets episode, sometimes it was pets too, which was just not a part of my work at the time. So while I was working in the trance mediumship space and communicating with guides and doing Reiki and healing and all of that, I wasn't yet doing evidential mediumship. That came kind of next after all of that. So when I sought out teachers, I was already having the experiences. But for those that are wanting to foster, fertilize these experiences, just getting quiet with yourself and sitting and being available. I know we've talked about this on some other episodes, but inviting your loved ones in the spirit world to join you. Of course, you can do things like signs. And I know I've talked about this before. I have that free course sign magnet on the homepage of my website, joyfulmedium.com. You just enter your email, it comes into your email box. And there are lessons about getting signs from the universe, getting signs from your loved ones in the spirit world, so they can communicate with us in that way, which is like in the world outside of ourselves. I think part of what happens is that people misunderstand what mediumship is from the perspective of the medium, right? So let's just say if you're not a medium, or not a medium yet, hasn't come to your awareness yet, mediumship might mean to you someone who can communicate with your loved ones. But from the perspective of the medium, while maybe I should just speak for myself, while I can feel my own loved ones, and while sometimes I'll be aware of them in my own meditation, or at other times in the day, just aware of them next to me, or aware of a hello from them, it's not quite the same as communicating with the loved ones of my clients. And here's why. When I meet a client, whether it's for the first time or if it's a return client, I do have people that see me occasionally to communicate with their loved ones, whether it's the same loved one or other loved ones. I don't know everything about that person. So I'm more of a clean slate for them, or an objective medium for them, and they can share details and information. And it makes it just slightly easier for me to keep my mind to the side, how we were talking about earlier, that my mind ideally shouldn't be coloring or adding information. I mean, there'll always be a degree of that happening. It's just, it's not as clear and clean line like that. But ideally, we want to be more on the side of the spectrum of the information coming from the spirit person, right? So it's easier for my mind not to interject if it's somebody I don't know, because I don't know anything about them. Whereas if it's my uncle, for example, and I know certain things about him, he could start sharing a bit of information, and then my mind already knows that story and wants to fill it in. Whereas maybe he wasn't going there with that story at all. So it is just, I don't know if the word is easier, but it is a different experience to communicate with someone else's loved ones. And the truth is, not everybody wants to do that. So being a medium, it's not really for the medium to communicate with our own loved ones. Even though, like I said, I can feel my loved ones around. I can receive inspiration and love and hellos and encouragement, and subtle feelings and sensings or signs in the world for them to let me know that they're with me and that they know what's happening with me. But it's not the same as communicating with other people's loved ones. And for me, that's the distinction where I believe we all have the ability to feel and sense our own loved ones. And again, I want to clarify when I say that, I don't mean that they are going to materialize like a partially invisible Scooby-Doo style ghost in front of you. That is not how it works. Once in a blue moon, perhaps that might happen for some people, but it's pretty rare, guys. What it will be is just this gentle, sometimes it might be the whiff of the memory of a perfume or a cologne that someone wore. Or, we sometimes we talk about finding that dime or penny in the dryer when you didn't have no change in your pocket. Or it could be, a song comes on, in the radio in the exact right moment, and that just happens to be the song that was like the song between you and your friend that you shared, or a song that was at their memorial service, or something like that. Those are signs in the world. Sometimes it's just as simple as you're driving in the car and that person pops into your mind out of nowhere, where you get the sense or just the feeling. It might feel like you're imagining it, but just like the essence that they're sitting beside you. Or you might glance in the rearview mirror and think you saw something out of the corner of your eye, but not quite, and there's nothing there. It can be like that. I believe we all have that ability. I believe our loved ones, because of the love we share with them, they're using the emotion, the energy of that love that still exists as a real thing, to say hello, to communicate, to get your attention, to blend their soul with you just a little bit, to say hello and give you that encouragement or that love or that emotion that they want to give, the memory of them, right? So sometimes it can be like that, or they can just share a memory out of nowhere. Maybe you're in the kitchen making something and all of a sudden you have a memory of, a time when you and your friend were making a snack after school, and your friend's on the other side. That's them saying hello and being right with you in that moment. So it can be like that. And we all have that ability. You don't necessarily have to be a medium to communicate with your own loved ones in that way. For me, the way I make the distinction is mediums are, in this way, evidential mediums are communicating with other people's loved ones to give details, information that can be validated, meaning the recipient, the sitter, the client can validate at least a good percentage of the information through those yeses and nos that we talked about. And the medium can slightly misunderstand. I might misunderstand Army for Navy, or, someone, I don't know. There's lots of things we can slightly understand. I've misunderstood, Patricia for, I don't know, Letitia. So it's like, you can misunderstand details, certainly, but it's usually not that far off. And the better part of the information, like the better percentage, should be understood ultimately. Now, that doesn't mean that every single statement that the medium says is going to be 100% correct all of the time. It is why it's called work, because we're working at understanding. So I might see, let's go back to the example of Dad's watch. I might see Dad's watch and I might feel the heaviness of it on my wrist, right? And it's not like a watch appears on my wrist. I might feel the heaviness of it, and I might suddenly get the emotion of an illness in Dad's end of his life and be aware that, oh, you know what? I know your dad couldn't wear his watch at the end of his life because it was too big. His wrists had gotten small and it was too big for his wrist, and the face wouldn't stay up. And we didn't want to permanently, change it to be tight. We wanted to keep it how it was. And then in addition to that, I might also know, and I know that you still have your dad's watch. And I remember I talked about, where it could be, but that's dad's decision as he's communicating with me what he wants to talk about. Maybe he doesn't want to say who has the watch and where it is. Maybe he wants to say, and I had that watch, my son's whole life, and he remembers me wearing that watch his whole life. Maybe he wants to say, and I gave him the exact same watch at his own wedding. Maybe he wants to say, they lost the watch, and tell them to stop worrying about it. So it's up to the spirit person what they're wanting to communicate and what the story is behind it, right? And it really is such an honor and a joy to get to feel the emotions and the memories of people's loved ones. But like I said, not everyone wants to do that work. And the other thing to know, the other part of this question that I often get from people who are either having their own subtle experiences or have thought about it, even if you are a medium, even if you are aware of spirit people who are not your own, it doesn't mean you have to do anything with it. It doesn't mean you have to pursue the education. It doesn't mean you have to learn how to work with it. It doesn't mean you ever have to become a medium who works with other people to communicate with their own loved ones. You're not required to do any of that. Just like, maybe you're good at DIY projects, but you don't want to be a carpenter, right? It doesn't mean you have to do something just because the ability presents itself to you. So I think that's important to note too, that while we can't make someone into a medium who doesn't have that natural gift or ability, we also can't force someone who is a medium to want to do it. And I will tell you, it's not easy work, but probably not for the reason that you might assume. People often assume that it's because of the heaviness of the emotion, because of course I meet people who have passed tragically, or who have trauma in their life, or have other emotions that feel, on the heavy side, difficult emotions, challenged emotions. But the healing that comes through as part of the communication, the way the information is given in a way to uplift, clarify, validate, and I keep wanting to say heal because that's what it is. It's healing. It makes it not as heavy, or it gives some closure to it. But the reason it's hard is because it's super vulnerable for the medium to have to continuously do this work and be available in a way that we're not coloring things with our own emotion, and continuing down this journey of being a medium requires the medium to be continuously doing our own personal development, our own emotional processing, our own taking hard, long looks at ourselves and being very honest with ourselves in ways that are often very uncomfortable. And the truth is, someone who, like, this is a passion, and I've met mediums who don't have the passion for it, and that's okay. Like I said, we're not required to do anything with any type of gift that you might have. But just like any other gift, it's the passion that fuels the pursuit, is what I'm feeling inspired to say right now. It's one of those things that it's not an easy journey for the medium. So it's the passion that keeps us coming back. Anyone who has been in development with me, I've got a good handful of friends who I've known through the years of my development. I have cried in class more times than I like to remember or admit. Like, it's an emotional journey for the medium. It pushes us to our own limits of our comfort zone and beyond. It pushes us to our own depths of emotion. It pushes us to realize things about ourself. So the joke is, mediumship is not for the faint of heart. And it does make sense to me why, even if someone thinks they want to be a medium, if their soul's not ready, or their human is not ready for this part of the journey, right? Because we're a soul having this human experience. I feel like our soul's always ready, but maybe we're not ready at this part of our timeline in our life experience, or for one of many reasons. I really feel like if it's the timing's not right, it's it's not going to be as strong or as beautiful or as long lasting as it could be. I feel like it's like anything where sometimes if we try to push ourselves too hard too soon, it's like trying to crack a hard boiled egg when it's not boiled, I guess. It's more messy. So I think that's the reason why, like I said, from what I've learned from Andy, it's why it's the best when these experiences start rising up for someone to start working or training at that point, because it means the gifts are starting to get ripe. They're starting to present themselves, and then we can start to learn how to work with them. The other thing that I didn't understand before I did this work is I thought in my naivete that mediums just kind of came out as these fully formed, gifted individuals. And I don't know if anyone's journey is like that. Nobody I personally know has ever articulated to me that their journey was like that, where it's like just poof, they're a medium, they can see and hear spirit, and the person just talks to them, and they don't have to do any work to understand what's going on, and they don't have to do any work on themselves, and here they are. I thought that's how it was supposed to be. I thought, certainly, if I'm meant to do this work, it shouldn't be this hard. I should have dead people standing next to me, talking in my ear. I should be able to hear their voice. They should be able to tell me what they want to say, and I can say it, and that's the job. I couldn't have been further from the actuality of it. It's the communication. Not all spirit people communicate the same, just like not all people that you know in your life right now communicate the same. Some people are more verbal communicators. Some people are more visual communicators. And they have to also, the spirit people, they have to also know how to work with the individual medium, because not all mediums are exactly the same. Our gifts work in some aspects the same, and in some aspects differently, because we're all unique individuals with our own set of life experience and memories and emotions and frame of reference, right? So they're working within all of that to try to get us to understand their story or their personality or their emotion to convey to their people, their loved ones who are with us, either in a group or in a one-on-one setting. So I hope that makes sense the way I'm explaining it. I feel like feels kind of elusive, and it's so intangible that it's, I think that's why I was so confused about it when before I started. And even when I started, I like to tell people, I used to think, just like most things, I'm a pretty quick learner. I pick things up pretty quickly. I tend to be drawn to things that I am like reasonably able to accomplish with hard work and effort, right? So I thought, yeah, this cool. Like, okay, now this is just must be the next step. I'm doing healing. I've already done some psychic development. I'm, this must be the next thing. I'm going to train for a year. I'll get this cracking. I'll know how to do it. And then this will be good. I guess this is what I'm supposed to do next. It was not like that at all. It's been several years of development. I'm always still developing. I don't think I will ever be done developing. And it's one of the many, many reasons why I think all of us were so inspired by the amazing soul Mavis Spatilla, because when I knew her, she was in her 70s and 80s, had been 50 years a medium, and would tell us that she was still learning, that she wasn't done learning, and that the spirit world was still constantly teaching her things. And what better way to model ourselves than there's always more for us to learn. There's no way we're ever going to be fully developed, fully baked, right? So just that permission of like, hey, you don't need to learn to the point where you think you're going to be done learning, because that's not real. So if you feel like you are starting to have these gifts, or already know that you have these gifts and you are wanting to develop, I just want to set up your expectations appropriately, that it's a lifelong course of study and work and development. And yes, while, eventually you probably won't be with a mentor all the time anymore, there's often several years of mentorship. And then all the mediums I know, we still enjoy either taking classes from a different tutor, or wanting to go on a different course, or wanting to experience something different, or wanting to deepen our own practice. So a lot of us are perpetually in some form of education, but also the spirit world's constantly educating us. And I learn new things all the time. It's the way that I'm trained. I can't speak for every medium or every type of mediumship, but the way that I'm trained in evidential mediumship is not with, I sometimes hear other mediums talk about like a symbol library. I'm not trained that way. And here's why. Again, Andy Bing, who I love and adore, and my friend and mentor, and we'll praise him forever. He explained it in such a great way where, for example, if I as a medium have a symbol of the red rose means anniversary, right? Well, there's 1,000 things a red rose could mean to 1,000 different people, right? 1,000 different things. Maybe you gave them a red rose right before they passed away. Maybe you just put roses on their memorial site. Maybe their name is Rose. Maybe your name is Rose. There's a 1,000 different things a red rose can be, as many different things to as many different people, right? I had something recently in a group event, and the person had brought the person in the audience, the spirit person had brought this person roses for their whole relationship, and after their crossing, their children now are giving roses to the remaining partner. So it can mean a lot of different things. Now, if I as the medium lock it in and say, okay, this is the only thing this means, red rose always means anniversary, well, then I'm locking out all of those other meanings for thousands of different souls who might want to communicate to me using that symbol or that image. So each thing, we can't necessarily assign meaning saying this always means this, because it's not going to always mean that to every person. Now, we certainly can have some things that help us understand, like I guess the best example, I've heard different teachers use different examples. I'm trying to use my own. The best examples that I can give is, for me, when I'm working with a spirit person, even though I've lived in, I don't know, more than 10 different houses in my life, like lots more than 10, there's probably the same 4 or 5 houses from my life experience that tend to get used a lot. One is someone's house that I was almost never at. It was like a friend of my dad who passed away a long, long time ago. But then there's lots of things in that house. Sometimes they'll use the wood paneling. Sometimes they'll use the way that the telephone was in the kitchen. Sometimes they'll use certain treats that I used to get in their refrigerator. Sometimes they'll use the pool in the back. So it's not them always using, it's not that house represents one thing. That's for some reason we're frequently using that house in my sessions. So they use that house, which I wasn't even at that much. They use a house that I grew up in for several years. They use a house that my parents lived in until I was 3, that my dad, had for many years after. They use my grandma's house, one of my grandma's houses. And then they use another house that is a blend of a few different houses. Now, when in my mind's eye, I find myself like in that house, when I see a quick flash of that house, I don't immediately say, okay, this house symbolizes this. I know this is a grandma. I know this is, because that's not how it works. I continue to blend with, receive information from the spirit person and let them, in my mind's eye, either move me through that space or help me feel what it is they're wanting to direct my attention to. Like in my grandma's house, for example, sometimes they're wanting to talk about the orientation of the kitchen. I know it's a weird thing, but like where the back door is, where the table is, where the, sometimes I've even had it where they're wanting to talk about the oven. For some reason, I remember that oven kind of specifically, and they've used it to help me understand what someone's cooking or smells or recipes or things like that. So there could be a million different things that they're helping me understand in any one of those locations, but it does tend to be these handful of houses that they're using if we're using a house for any reason. So it could even be the state or city that it's in. It could be a million different things. Sorry, that was loud. So it's interesting the way it works with the medium's frame of reference. Now, if that same spirit person was working with a different medium, they would have to use that medium's references to try to express what it is they want to express about their life. So that is, I guess, a long-winded way of just giving you a little bit more about how mediumship works. How do you know if you're a medium? Well, spirit people just start presenting themselves to you. And typically it's when you can feel or sense or just kind of know that someone else is there. And it's typically not your own person. Because remember, like I said, we all have the ability, whether someone wants to label themselves a medium or not, we all have the ability to feel and sense our own loved ones. Medium, someone that's going to be like a working medium, is going to work with other people's loved ones, not their own. And I would ask yourself if you even want to do that, if you even feel like a desire to commit to a process like that. And if you do, the best way, like I said, to start nurturing it and fostering it is to sit quietly in meditation. If that doesn't resonate with you, if you're someone who's like, I hate meditating, I hate, being quiet, I can't quiet my mind, there are other ways to do it. You could do it through a walking meditation, or again, I'm going to talk about Mavis because I always love the way she would talk about, her time that she would spend, her personal time. Obviously, she was a medium for more than 50 years, so she spent a lot of time with the spirit world. But her version of meditating was when she would do her ironing, she would move her awareness to the spirit world and let whoever join her. And that was her version of meditation. It wasn't her sitting silently necessarily. She would always tell us she was doing her ironing and she would move her awareness to the spirit world, to that space next to her. And that's when her guides were communicating with her. That's when she was spending her time with the spirit world in the way that she did it. So it can be different for everyone. However, it's creating that space and time and quieting the mind. So for you, it might be folding laundry or washing dishes or walking outside or staring at the ocean or even just staring at a blank spot on the wall. But it's calming or allowing that busy human mind to quiet. It's never going to quiet all the way. I wish someone had told me that earlier on, because I thought I couldn't do it because my mind would never quiet all the way for a long period of time. That's a muscle to train as well. But it can just be you kind of zoning out and just creating space. I know that's a weird way to say it, and it's so intangible that it's probably hard to understand what I mean. But if you can get a sense of your personal space bubble, which is really your auric field, the emanation of your soul from your body creates your auric field, commonly understood as the personal space bubble. The way I always explain it to clients and students is if you've ever had someone standing too close behind you in line and you didn't see them, but you just felt them, like you just turned around like someone's too close to me. It's because they were in your bubble. They were in your auric field. They were too close in your space. You sensed them. You didn't see them with your physical senses, but you energetically sensed their energy blending into yours. That's your personal space bubble. So let's just say that you're not going to close your eyes and meditate. You're just going to zone out and stare out the window into the sky. You just get a sense of your bubble and you just imagine opening it a little wider and creating some space next to you in your bubble. You can still zone out and sit out looking out the window. But you're just giving that space for the spirit world to start sitting next to you and working with you. You probably won't feel anything happening. Most of the time, it doesn't feel like anything. Some of it's building that trust that something is actually happening behind the scenes, so to speak. They can work with you in a way that we're not always totally conscious and aware of. It's very subtle often. And it happens over time. So often, I have people express to me, and it was my experience that I learned, we call it sitting in the power, or sitting in the presence is another way to say it. Sitting with spirit, we sitting with your own soul. There's lots of ways to say it or think of it. We all resonate. Different things resonate with all of us. So it is just starting to create that time and space for quieting down, for surrendering yourself to whatever experience might happen. But like I said, usually not a lot's happening. I'm not often aware of people in my meditations. Once in a while I am. Once in a while I'm aware of a guide. Once in a while I might just get a gentle sense that a loved one's sitting next to me, or a loved one might pop into my mind, and then I feel almost like the whisper of the whisper of a wind next to me. It's not even like a solid breeze. It's just like the idea of the person, and then I just know that they're there. So it is so light and elusive that really just starting to get in touch with your own emotions, with your own feelings. Another way to start, it's funny because a lot of the ways to start working on these gifts is kind of like not working on these gifts at all. To start doing your emotional processing, to start in the moment, identifying how you feel. Maybe it's content, maybe it's stressed, maybe it's worried. Maybe you're not feeling your emotions at all. We're all empaths, which means we all have the ability to sense other people's emotions around us. Maybe you're sensing someone else's emotion. And that's a great example of that blending of souls, like I was talking about. You're blending your energy with the energy of another person and feeling or sensing their emotions. And it's just starting to get more conscious of that is a way to start developing your own sensitivities as a person. And then should a disembodied spirit person happen to sit next to you at some point, you might recognize it. I do want to encourage you not to put pressure on these gifts, even if it's something that you feel like you really, really want to do or experience at some point. The more pressure you put on it, kind of the harder it'll be for it to rise to the surface. So read about it, learn about it, watch, go find good mediums and watch demonstrations of mediumship. Listen to this podcast. I have great mediums on here that are trustworthy. And that's the way to start kind of moving yourself into it a little bit more. And just know the gifts can rise to the surface at any time in your life, and you're not obligated to do something with them. But even if you're not having these experiences now, it doesn't mean that you definitely don't have any gifts. Because like I said, we're all intuitive, we're all empathic, we all have the ability to sense our own loved ones. But not all of us either have the ability or want to exercise the ability to communicate with other people's loved ones in a meaningful way. So I hope this makes sense. I hope that this has expanded your mind a little and got you thinking a little bit. I would love to hear what parts of this resonated with you, and if you've changed your feeling about either whether you are a medium or maybe you didn't realize that you have the ability to communicate with your own loved ones, and maybe you feel like you don't need to pursue being a medium anymore as long as you can communicate with your own loved ones. A lot of mediums go into development to communicate with someone they love, and you already have that ability right now. So thanks for being here with me. I love it when you guys send me these kind of questions, because I feel like it gives me a chance to explore some of these topics and tell you a little bit more about what I know. As you probably know by now, I could talk forever and ever about this, but I don't want to keep you all day. I just wanted to have this conversation because it's so near and dear to my heart. And I think it's important for people to know that I didn't always know that I was a medium, and the gifts presented themselves when I was ready and able to start pursuing them. And it doesn't look the same for everybody. Just like our life stories are not all the same, the way that our gifts move and present are not all the same. They're as unique as we are. So I hope that this gives you a little more permission to be your unique and beautiful soul self. Big hugs, lots of love. Thanks for joining me today inside the Spirit Speakeasy.